Hey, this is Meridith Elliott Powell, and welcome to Thriving in Uncertainty, the show where we dive into the steps, we discuss the strategies, everything that you need to know to really turn all of this uncertainty to your competitive advantage. And I am super excited to have a really powerhouse guest with us today, Kristin Arnold. Welcome to the show, Kristin.
Why, thank you, Meredith. It's exciting to be here.
Okay, so we want to talk about what it takes to really thrive in constantly shifting and changing times. But before we dive in, kind of give our viewers, give our audience a little bit of background about you. Tell us your story.
So I've been facilitating what I call high stakes meetings you can't afford to screw up, for about 27 years. And part of that conversation is around strategic planning. Planning for the certainty and the uncertainty. I come from the military. I was in the Coast Guard, and actually I helped the Army develop some critical thinking skills back when they started going to Afghanistan and realized, oh my gosh, we're not fighting a war here. We need to have critical thinking skills to adjust to changing environments where we don't really know what's even around the corner. So they termed at that time something that you might have heard, Meredith, and some of the listeners here, a term called VUCA. That actually comes from the Army. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, chaotic. Some people call it complex and ambiguous. And that's really the world that we're living in right now as well.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So just in that introduction, there are about 1,000 things I want to ask you. I want to get to critical thinking skills, but I want to start with strategic planning. I mean, I love the fact that you do high stakes meetings. These are meetings you cannot afford to screw up. Now that tends to make me think about corporations and things like that, but it's also, gosh, I run a small business. I really can't afford, I have got this much margin happening in my business, right? I can't afford to screw it up. So how do you strategically plan in an environment like we're living in right now, where everything is constantly shifting?
Yeah, so I would suggest that there's not a plan, that there are multiple, what some people would call scenario planning. Strategic planning is something that started actually with the Japanese a long, long time ago, about forecasting way into the future. Well, we don't even know what's happening tomorrow, no less 10, 20 years. But we do have a sense for, let's just say, the next year, maybe even two. And so what I'm suggesting for people right now in this kind of scenario is that we figure out what's the best case, like plan for what's the best case. If these kinds of assumptions hold true, this is the best case. You also need to do the worst case. This is, we really don't want to go there, but we have to. Jim Collins talks about the Stockdale paradox, and that we really do need to be realistic and say, okay, this is the worst case. There is the most probable case, right? And then I had a client who actually, in the pandemic world, I would suggest that you do Armageddon, which is when like the world goes to hell in a handbasket. What does that look like? Which is way beyond your worst case, right? So when you do those kind of 4 different scenarios, that leads you to some very clear pathways. You go, oh, these are some common themes. These are some threads that we need to line up.
And I imagine that keeps you really pretty flexible and open, because at the end of the day, you don't know exactly what is going to happen. But if you're thinking through scenarios, then you're, I would assume, more flexible and more nimble when something even out of the ordinary happens.
Right. There's a famous quote, and I don't remember who said it. General MacArthur. No, Eisenhower. Eisenhower, I believe. And he said, plans are worthless. Planning is essential. So don't really think about it as like the document, because that in many companies, it's credenzaware. Once you write it, it goes on the shelf and you never look at it. However, you've gone through the thought process. Now, the other piece, Meredith, that I would highly recommend everyone to do who's going through this planning, and isn't this like great timing to do it? Because I always do my planning the first, in the holidays, beginning of January, is that you look at the trends that we're seeing. Like COVID accelerated a lot of trends that were already in play. Online shopping, already in play. Telemedicine, already in play. Online training, already in play. Online conferencing, already in, like all of these things were already in play, but the adoption wasn't quite where it is now. Right. We have that hockey puck stick of adoption. So ask yourself, what's the 1, 2, or 3 trends that you're seeing that you think you might be able to leverage? So in my business, your business, obviously that would be virtual meetings. Right. We're going to be able to leverage that kind of trend. Online training, we're going to be able to leverage that trend. So, ask yourself, what are some of the things that we could do?
I love that. I was just talking with a client about this, who they had bought some online training, and then the person who was doing the online training for them, hence how they got to me, was insistent that the videos needed to be 1 hour to 2 hours long. And my client was saying, my team just doesn't have that kind of attention span. That's never going to happen. But it's a great scenario of somebody who's doing the training, not really thinking about how customers are changing. What are the trends that are happening out there right now? And because if you do follow that, you'll notice you don't get to decide in this marketplace exactly what you want to do. You need to be paying attention to what's happening in the marketplace and adjust your business to be more successful.
Excellent advice. You are brilliant, Meredith.
How do you keep a plan though from becoming credenza-ware? I mean, I think so many people get frustrated with strategic planning because it does become credenza-ware. It's this, you spend a couple of days working on it and then it sits on a shelf and it goes away. So what is your advice that once you get through the high stakes meeting, how do you keep it front and center?
Well, there's a couple of things that you need to be paying attention to in strategic planning, is that it is not operations. So, operations is keeping the trains running. It's like stuff that you expect your leaders and managers and employees to do without any guidance, understanding, right? There are some things in your strategic plan, which the 4 disciplines of execution calls a stroke of a pen. You just do it. Just, as Nike says, just do it. And then there's the stuff in the middle that requires more advanced thinking, skills, capabilities, time, resources. And that's where you need to really focus some of the energy. Now, as an entrepreneur myself, I have a strategic plan. I believe that I need to eat my own dog food. If I'm talking about strategic planning, I better be doing it. So I always look at every week, what's the 1 or 2 things that I'm going to do to move the plan forward? And I have accountability to myself that I need to cross those things off the list. Now, if you take that from an organizational standpoint, you need to have some kind of mechanism. And I help clients build the mechanism to say, how are you going to declare what it is that you intend to do? What's the time frame? And what's the accountability? So it's kind of like a football game. You need to know what the score is. You need to know 1st and 10, do it again. We like it. We like it. You gotta make people feel like it is something worthwhile. Oh, by the way, that's important too, that your plan is worthwhile and people are excited about it and that they're willing to do the extra work, because it by definition is extra work.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we've got a great question from the audience. Cecilia has come in and she has said she runs a small business. She's an entrepreneur, and she wants to know, she's never done a strategic plan. Where does she start, and how much time does she need to devote to it?
Okay, so that's a really good question, Cecilia. First, you want to do a year in review and just go, so what worked? What didn't? What are your metrics? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? Just kind of do an evaluation of your own business And then you want to do an environmental scan so that you see what these trends are, so that you can see what's going on that's impacting your business, right? Your customers, your business. And I'm simplifying this a lot, so I hope that this is helpful. And then
we like it simple.
I like it simple. And then from that, you're probably going to get a couple of themes that you keep running into. It's like a, a pachinko machine. You just keep bouncing into these ideas and you go, oh, there's like 4 things that I keep running into that seem to be resonating with customers, with my business, and with you. Cecilia, you are the main driver of your business, so you have to be excited about these things. I got to tell you, there's been a couple of things that have been on my strategic plan that I thought were, oh my God, that's a fabulous idea. Fabulous. But I never did it because I thought it was a great idea, but I didn't have excitement to execute on the idea. So you need to have excitement on the idea, but you also need to be excited about, oh, wouldn't that be great to do? Because somebody's got to do this. And if you don't want to do it, get somebody on your team or outsource it. But you have to be excited about the management of it because people are going to take their lead from you.
In a nutshell, what to you is the difference between what's the impact to a company who does a strategic plan versus one who doesn't use a strategic plan?
So I think I think it's just a helpful thought process because otherwise, what is it? Alice in Wonderland said, where do I need to go? And the Cheshire Cat said, well, any road will get you to wherever you want to go.
Right.
I think if you want to be intentional, and I think especially in this VUCA world, if you just let the world happen to you, you are not really taking control and responsibility for your business. Now, it's not to say that, oh, I have my strategic plan and that's it. You got to be flexible and you got to be adaptable. And let me just show you. I'm working on mine right now. Okay. Cecilia, this is my strategic plan. There it is. I've got my my mission up here. I have my core values. I have my strategic initiatives. I have my implementing strategies and the metrics. 1 page. I got that from Vern Harnish. 1 page.
Keep it simple.
Otherwise, it's just too extensive.
How many goals do you advise for people to have in a given year?
I suggest no more than 5. Because and statistically, if you have 1, you have pretty much 100% chance you're going to achieve it. 2, it's about 90%. 3, it starts diminishing to something like 70.
Wow.
Again, that's 4DX stuff, 4 disciplines of execution. They've done a lot of work on that. I'm pulling those numbers out of the air, but they sound good. I think they're pretty close.
Yeah. Okay. I want to switch gears and I want to start talking around critical thinking because critical thinking is a term I feel like gets overused and it is a little misunderstood. What exactly do we mean by critical thinking?
That you make smart decisions, that you think it through. So let me give you an example. And a very simple tool is if you think about some decisions that you go, oh God, what was I thinking? I could have had a V8. And one of those decisions that you go, oh my God, chances are you just didn't think it through. You just didn't think about the other possibilities. You did what you initially thought, or you did something that somebody else wanted you to do, or fill in the blank. There's lots of different biases that affect our thinking skills. So a very simple thing that you can do is, and not for every decision that you're running into, but the really important ones, you ask yourself, so what are the other possibilities, right? Just, and you have to come up with at least 10. I call it the 10X rule. You have to come up with at least 10 different answers. And what you'll find is that usually we stop at like the usual suspects. And we pick from one of those. We don't really think it through and go, so what are the other possibilities? And sometimes those other possibilities are ones that we don't want to face, or maybe we are not being as creative or innovative. And especially in these times, we need to be more creative and innovative and actually face the facts. So I highly recommend the 10X. I try to hit for 20. There's a great book by Tim Thurston called Think Better. If you want to know more about the brainstorming, there's the first third, which are the usual suspects. The second third, which can be a little creative. And then there's the third, which is harder to get to, and people usually stop after the second third. But the third is when you really like give it a pause, give it a break, come back, ask other people what their idea is. Like you really work it. And for important things, you really need to work it.
So should we apply critical thinking skills when we have some of our biggest challenges in front of us, some of our biggest opportunities, some of the combination of both? What do you suggest? The other question I have coming behind that, which may go to this, is that I'm kind of fascinated that every time I research the soft skills or what employers are looking for most these days, one of them is critical thinking, and it seems to be becoming void in our society. And so I'm curious around your thoughts around that as well.
Well, I think we're doing a lot of Google thinking. It's like, oh, you have a question. My husband and I, let's ask Siri.
Right.
Siri's smart. No, Siri's dumb. Dumber than dirt. And most people don't look past the fold. You know, just because it's on the computer does not mean it's valid.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, okay. And people are looking for that instantaneous answer. And so I think critical thinking is skills to help you think through things better, smarter, not necessarily faster or more efficiently. Like it's really to help you make the best decisions. And that's individually as well as collaboratively when you're working on a team. So I think critical thinking skills are much more important because we don't know what's around the corner.
Right.
And things are much more complex. It used to be, Meridith, I could say, Meridith, please go do this. And you would go do it. And you would come back and say, Kristin, I did it. That was like the world of work, circa 1950. Well, no, it's not that way anymore.
Yeah, I think one of the most challenging things right now is the fact that we are all trying to lead and work in an environment we've never led or worked in before. I don't care how good your mentors are right now. Mentors can give you wisdom, but nobody's really experienced what we're experiencing right now. So you have to be able to think your way through. Something I've become really kind of fascinated with lately, and I think it goes in combination with uncertainty, is the fact that a lot of people have really been stuck in this environment. Understandably so. I mean, this has been, certainly everything that we've come to count on, from being able to have our family over to dinner, to going into the office and sharing a birthday cake, once a month for the office party, to being able to physically go to a trade show or to sit down on a sales call. Pretty much everything has evaporated. But what are some things do you think that people can do to move through and become unstuck if the environment we're in right now is just incredibly challenging?
Yeah, so I love this question, Meridith, and I'm smiling from ear to ear, because I think being stuck is a symptom of trying to control things that you can't control. The whole serenity prayer of, God grant me the wisdom to know the difference between the things that I can't control and the things that I can control. If you feel stuck, stop focusing on the things that you can't control and focus on the things that you can control. So, by the way, if you were a poor leader face-to-face in the virtual world, nothing's going to help you. But you can say, okay, so what did I do in the face-to-face world? And how do I do that even better in the virtual world? So let me give you a very clear example.
Okay.
In the world that I work in, I have a meeting that I am facilitating virtually. They do it face-to-face every year. It's a leadership summit. And they're like, we are going to do it face-to-face. Well, no, we're not doing it face-to-face.
Right.
And they're like, okay, so what are your objectives? What are you trying to do? Well, we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this. And one of the pieces was we want a lot of energy and excitement and collaboration. And I'm like, well, then let's build in that energy and excitement and collaboration. So they went from, I don't want to do this virtually, to, oh my God, we're so excited. And the way that we formulated the meeting was break it up in chunks, as you were talking about earlier. We've got an experience box that they're getting shipped. So we're dropping like a present that they're opening up every like hour or so. And some of it is related to the mission that we're talking about. Some of it's related to collaboration. Some of it's just food. We've got vodka pops at the end. We've got we've got an Uber Eats card for lunch. I mean, and they're like, really? We can do that? I'm like, well, why not?
Right.
It takes more intentionality. And I'll tell you something, putting these boxes together has not been a whole lot of fun. But seeing their faces is going to be amazing. So I think we have to rethink, and rather than just say, okay, I'm gonna take a live meeting and I'm gonna shove it online, is you have to start with the objective. What is the purpose, the objective? What are we trying to accomplish? And how do we do that in this different environment, in this different world? And that requires the creativity. That requires brainstorming. That requires asking other people. Like, I just discovered Gardino snack mix.
Yeah.
Never heard of it. It's amazing. Like, it's a new staple in our house. So
I love those. I love those questions, and I don't want our listeners to lose them. I mean, she said basically whatever challenge or opportunity you have in front of you, think about what your objective is. What are you trying to accomplish? And then how do we go after that in this new world? I think that if you have a team to get together, I think those are 3 great questions. Because, you know, even when you were just saying the questions, I could feel my energy start to shift as I started to think about those questions. Okay, now I understand where we're going. Now, if that's what we want to accomplish, how can I start to think about it differently? It's actually energizing, even in a challenging environment.
Okay, so you're bringing up a really good point, Meridith. A lot of it is how we as leaders pose the challenge. When you pose the challenge as an opportunity, you start getting creative opportunity thinking. When you pose it as a problem to be solved, you get very focused, but it's a laser problem solving thinking, and you're not going to be able to get that creativity. So pose it as an opportunity versus a problem to be solved, and you'll get a lot more energy.
Wow, it is hard to believe, but we have come here to the end of the show. I've just got 2 quick questions for you. One, everybody needs to know how to get a hold of you and how to find more information about critical thinking, high stakes meetings, and what they need to do to strategically lead their way through that. The other is, what's one piece of advice you have for people in today's, we're looking at 2021. Here we are right at the beginning of the year. What's the one piece of advice you have for business owners, entrepreneurs, or anybody who's just trying to slog their way through work every day and really make 2021 a better year than it was in 2020?
Thank you. It's KristinArnold.com. So you see the correct spelling, or you can go to extraordinaryteam.com, because I think every team can be extraordinary, achieving great results using a smooth process and enhancing the relationships along the way. And that leads me to my closing comment is, I think when we're looking at your definition of success for 2021, don't just think about the typical results that, you know, people are always driving towards. Oh, I want greater revenue. I want greater, profit. I want, greater EBITDA. I want greater ROI. I want the MICKEY acronym of the day. It's not just about the results. It's about really making sure that you're taking care of your people, that your people enjoy the culture that they're in, and that they know what the results are and how they're supposed to achieve it. And I think that when you balance those three things, results, process, and relationships, that's a healthy team. And don't just focus on the process because they're all working at home and you don't know how they're doing it. It's like, it's results, process, and relationships.
I love that. Results, process, and relationships. I think those are three big takeaways that we can all use to really make this year successful. Kristin, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, don't forget to go to KristinArnold.com. Now go ahead and pay attention to KRISTIN Arnold.com and join us again for another episode of Thriving in Uncertainty. Next week, we're going to be talking to Nate Woodbury about how to drive your YouTube channel. And check out our website, valuespeaker.com. See the purple bar at the top called Emerge Successful. It is chock full of free tools and resources you can use to turn all of this uncertainty to your competitive advantage. We'll see you next week.